This meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Welcome everybody. If you're going to have a hot mic, I urge you to have your phone on silent. I've got a call coming in right now from someone named Potential Spam. So I'd like to call the June 29th, 2022 special meeting of the Encinitas Planning Commission to order. Now, this meeting is special, and this is not a scheduled meeting. It's scheduled, but it's not in part of our regular schedule. Tonight, in the interest of public health, the city of Encinitas is temporarily taking actions to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic by holding commission meetings electronically. Now, this meeting can be viewed through the city's YouTube channel or through our website at encinitasca.gov. Now, I want to stress this point. If you plan to speak tonight, you need to connect to this Zoom webinar that we're broadcasting on using the link found in our agenda on the website. If you're watching this meeting on YouTube or through the city's website viewer, you will not be able to participate fully. So once you've joined this meeting, you will have several opportunities to speak, and I'll call them out as the meeting progresses. I want to stress your feedback is important to us. Now, Dina, can we have a roll call?
Okay, so it looks as if, well, I don't know if
your video is very quiet. We can't quite hear what you're saying.
Maybe is that better? I have a mask.
It's a little bit better. I'm not sure if there's something techie you could fix in your end. No, the gain's all the way up.
Okay, yeah. IT's saying the volume's all the way up.
Okay.
Okay, so present we have Chair Doyle, Commissioner Prendergast, Commissioner Sherrod, with Vice Chair Dalton and Commissioner Ryan absent.
All right, thank you. Let the record reflect we have 3 of the planning commissioners, which is a quorum, and we are moving forward with this meeting. We begin each of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a flag someone could put up? If you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to
the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
That's always an interesting audio experience. Thank you, everybody. Next on our agenda is any announcements, and I'd just like to remind everyone that after this meeting, we are entering our summer recess in the same manner that the council is. So there are no scheduled meetings in the month of July. Our next meeting is going to be August 4th on Thursday. That's our next regularly scheduled meeting. And I'll move past that. Does anyone else have anything to, any announcements? Nay? Moving on to oral communications. We start each meeting with oral communications where anyone wishing to speak on a topic not in tonight's agenda may request to do so. To speak at this time requires you to be viewing by Zoom, and if you wish to speak now on an item that is not one of our agendized item, which is Beacon Speech, SB9, or the bylaws, if you have an item, if you want to speak on an item that's not one of those 3, you should put your hand up now using your Zoom connection. Dina, I don't know who we have here. I don't see any hands.
Yeah, we have 4 attendees and no hands.
No hands. And I'm assuming they know how to use this. Wait, I see a hand up. Matthew.
Oh, there's Matthew. Oh, God.
And also Roberta, I see.
Matthew, you're on. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Are we able to speak on agenda item 8A?
It would be better, Matthew, if you were to wait until we'll have a staff report on that meeting. and we'll get more information, and you'll have time to comment after we receive that info.
Okay, thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, no worries. I see Roberta has a hand up. Can we check with her? Roberta, if you're waiting for another item, you could just take your hand down. It's no big whoop. Okay, moving on.
Oh, wait.
She's there.
Do we have someone? Or no? Is Roberta in?
It looks like Roberta lowered her hand.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought as well.
Okay.
So we will have, I will call out for hands as we deal with each agenda item. You'll have your say. Let's see, Anna, do we have any changes to the published agenda? Or is Anna here? Who is our staff? Oh,
I'm
hi
here.
there, Anna.
We do not have any changes.
Okay, we're gonna move on quickly to the consent calendar. These items are considered non-controversial or routine in nature. We have 2 items on tonight's consent calendar. They are the approval of minutes from May 26th and the approval of the minutes from June 2nd. Now, Commissioner Prendergast will have to recuse from both of these. He was not present. Well, Commissioner Sherrod and myself were both here, but I'm going to make a motion that we continue these items to our next scheduled meeting to a date.
I'll second.
Thank you, Susan. Can we call the question? I guess it's really, how do we do this? There's just 2 of us here. Well, Bob, you would have to be recused, so you're not even abstaining.
Can I vote to, well, I'll wait for the attorney to
You
tell
can,
us.
actually, no, you can vote
I vote to continue.
these.
Right,
So,
I vote to
perfecto.
continue. Yeah.
Thank you. So Dina, call the question.
Chair Doyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Sherrod,
Aye.
and Commissioner Prendergast.
Aye.
Okay, so the vote passes 3-0 with Commissioner Ryan and Vice Chair Dalton absent.
All right.
Commissioner Doyle, sorry, Chair
Yes.
Doyle. Are there any outstanding questions regarding the motion? The motion itself is proper.
Say that again.
I said the motion that was just made was proper.
It was proper.
There was no need to recuse from that motion.
Thank you very much. I think Commissioner Prendergast caught on to that earlier. And but thank you for your help there. We are moving past the consent calendar now, and we will enter into our regular agenda. Now, if you're here to speak on one of these items, you will be prompted by me at the appropriate time to raise your hand. And tonight's agenda, we have 3 items. And the first up is item 8A, which is the Beacons Beach Monitoring Plan. This is case number multi 005-151-2022. It also has a major use permit and a coastal development permit. This property is located at 948 Neptune Ave in the community of Leucadia. And this is a public hearing to consider the installation of monitoring equipment on the bluff and bluff face at Beacons Beach and a temporary construction staging area in the parking lot. Do we have any disclosures? Hearing none.
No.
I'm going to pass this over to Associate Planner Todd Moreau. Is it Todd there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Far out, man. I haven't seen you in ages.
Can you guys see the screen?
I can totally see the screen.
All right, perfect. So yeah, this is the Beacons Beach bluff monitoring plan. Project is located at 948 Neptune Avenue. And the proposal includes a major use permit and coastal development permit request to authorize the installation of at-grade and below-grade monitoring equipment on the top portion of the bluff, on the bluff face, and in the parking lot area to help monitor the current landslide area on site. There are both temporary measuring devices and permanent long-term measuring devices proposed at this time. The following measures will be installed by UTSD Scripps Institute of Oceanography at the access point. And that includes electrical conduits and sensors located in trenches within the parking lot, flexible electrical conduits on the face of the bluff, an instrument mast with footing back of the bluff edge. I'll go through this stuff. Deep and shallow borehole sensors, and then shallow monitoring points over the bluff along the beach trail, and then other minor structures such as antenna to basically relay the information, as well as a temporary staging area. And this is the site right off of Neptune there. I think most people are familiar with kind of the location. It is zoned R11, as well as the EROS PK zone, which is the open space ecological resource zone. It's within the Coastal Bluff Overlay Zone and within the California Coastal Commission's original field jurisdiction. The scope of work for the project remains east of the mean high tide line, which makes basically the coastal development permit within the city's jurisdiction. And the Planning Commission is the authorized body for reviewing and granting discretionary approvals for proposed development on the Coastal Bluff Overlay Zone, which is this. And so basically the Planning Commission is being asked to consider the major use permit and coastal permit at this time for the scope of work. And this just kind of breaks down the zoning so you can kind of see the two from the residential essentially here on the east side, kind of this brown shade versus the green, which is the ecological resource zone. Let's see. Go to the next, and then this is the existing condition. I think this photo was taken right kind of after the landslide itself, looking from more or less the parking lot down past the trail as it kind of curves on the north end, and essentially the temporary emergency fence, all that stuff has been placed to secure the area. This one was taken a couple days ago, so this is just looking back up at the area. It was a foggy morning and a high tide, but essentially you get the idea from the sand level looking back up. And so this is the plan itself. You can see there will be some shallow trenching essentially kind of in the parking lot. The purple will be the survey stakes or monitoring. The tilt censoring nodes, which I'll show you a photo of those here in a couple slides, are shown here in blue, monitoring the area. And then this kind of hatch is the kind of approximate location of where the landslide has occurred. There'll be the part of the existing fencing and then some temporary fencing to kind of isolate the area or access, at least during that installation. And then we kind of have twofold here. There's an existing fence from the temporary perspective, and then we've got some staging which will occur in the parking lot in 3 stalls here. I'll show you that. So that general area will be the staging area for called the project scope. And I think this just goes further into the details. I mean, basically, the Scripps project includes a variety of monitoring methods, from ground-based LiDAR surveys. They're going to conduct those weekly, provide high-resolution 3D models of topography to kind of see the changes, drone surveys. There'll be site visits occurring once a week to check the sensors and conduct measurements. And then the seismometer, will be installed in the mid-cliff area. I think it's this guy, I believe. And that one is installed deeper. There is a boring that's essentially 80 feet deep on that one. Some of the tilt meters, which are more surface level, those will be installed as you kind of saw on the cliff face, those blue squares. And then, let's see, this kind of shows what that tilt meter looks like. This is essentially a tilt meter. It essentially goes in the surface, probably like a foot down to basically sense the surface vibration, and then has a relay antenna to kick back to the network. There'll be clifftop surveys weekly, and then essentially they'll do a quadrangle array established with wood stakes to see any kind of movement, the physical slippage. Basically, in the EROSPK zone, any kind of development or change requires the major use permit. That's kind of why this is going through this process. And basically, AECOM was hired to do the geotechnical work, and they submitted reports. We got a couple before the land side and then after. And our geotechnical consultant who's here today, GeoPacifica, Jim Nolan, has reviewed those and concurred with those findings that there won't be any additional impact on the bluff for additional failure. And so with that, there's just another, that's kind of a panoramic shot from yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago. Looking from the sand, you can see the temporary fence essentially installed through the emergency permit. But with that, we're basically recommending that the Planning Commission approve case multi 5151 year 2022, subject to the conditions, and it is consistent with essentially the general plan, local coastal plan, and the municipal code. So we're here. We've got our civil engineer as well as our geotechnical engineer, and I believe some of the Scripps folks might be on as well. I saw, yeah. So they are on there to answer any additional questions.
Fantastic. Let me see. I'm still live. Oh, thank you, Todd. Before I move on, point of order, I see Chris Ryan is here. Thank you. And I'd like the record reflect that we now have 4 sitting planning commissioners present.
Yeah, sorry about that, Kevin.
That's okay. It's an unscheduled meet, or it's not our regularly scheduled meeting. So if you're like me, I've got my eye on Thursdays.
That's exactly what happened. So I apologize.
Yep. So we just had, I don't know, I didn't see when you came in. You were hidden behind the presentation. Did you follow what we just went through? You're still mute.
I missed the presentation.
Want a quick summary?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Please.
I did read.
Essentially, we can go back. Maybe just show you the plan real quick. But essentially, at the Beacons Beach, right, there has been a failure. You can see essentially this is the failure area approximately. But we're working with Scripps essentially to do a monitoring program to monitor any further slippages. So there's temporary measures as well as permanent measures, and then as well as the fencing, temporary fencing enclosure of the current parking lot as part of this. So it's basically to monitor the current situation. And we did have a parking lot project which would be potentially moving forward separately based on the monitoring of this. So there are 2 separate actions. Basically, before the commission at this point is a major use permit and coastal development permit for the monitoring aspects and the temporary closures as you kind of see it today.
Okay.
That's essentially what this permit is.
Okay, and I did read it too.
Okay.
Cool. Do we have any questions from the commission?
I have some.
Bob, jump in.
Yes, thank you. How are they going to power the electrical components used in the survey? Are they all battery or solar powered?
It is hard.
If you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
I think it's
right here.
My name is Matt Wadowski. I'm a senior engineer here at the city. As you can see, there is a power pole on the east side of Neptune Avenue across from the northern part of the parking lot. And the intent is to connect electricity to that power pole and bring electricity with conduits under the road to the boxes to get electricity to the sensors who do need it.
So you're going to trench across the parking lot to connect to the that dotted line where it says UCSD enclosure. Okay, you're going to trench across the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
And then from there, you're going to trench along the dotted lines or the hashed lines.
Correct. yes.
Correct.
Okay,
And you can see it go on the front here as well.
right. And then do you have a photo of what the tent looks like?
But
So I have an idea what the neighbors will be driving by?
as far as what the tent, what do you mean?
If you go back, you have a staging tent, I believe it is called.
The staging, it's just basically going to be a small fenced area. It's not going to be a tent.
Oh, okay.
This is just, we just wanted to basically showcase the area of the 3 stalls essentially that will be fenced and locked to putting in the equipment as they're installing it, for the project itself. So it's
Okay, and staying on this page, the hash line that cuts across horizontally across the parking lot, is that it says estimated failure plane. So the concern is the failure would fall all the way back to that line?
that is this line here.
Yes, that's
So
right.
this line still kind of exists related to a future parking lot project. So the idea was these 2 projects were originally integrated. We've separated it out to monitor it first.
Okay,
And the idea is to monitor it, in theory, possibly moving the parking lot back in a separate project past that failure plane line.
I see.
It'll be a separate. So that's just showing that, but this is kind of I think an older drawing that was related to that line's there. But the failure plane, I mean, as far as what's occurred is actually down in this area.
Okay, maybe it's just a
This is a more of a historic failure plane line that the city and we're aware of through geologic or geotechnical studies that have been done over the last 10 years?
20 years.
20 years, yeah, 20 years.
So I'm assuming then that, all right, so for this assumption, that's not relevant. But I guess
No.
that idea of a failure plane then extends to both the north and south. Obviously, that would go right through homes. So I guess that's just a marker demarcating where you might put the future parking lot if you have to relocate it, correct?
Correct. Yep, that's all that's doing.
Okay, it's not.
This is literally a monitoring project to monitor those conditions. You can kind of see the placement of the nodes is to understand that estimated failure plane as well as the current condition of the actual failure area. So this is, they want to monitor that to ensure that there's no more slippage, which I believe if there is not, I think it has stabled out. So,
Okay.
so that's the.
Well, it's kind of it's misleading, I guess, for a non-technical person like myself to use the word failure plane that far back. That's just my opinion. It's not really relevant, but there's just a little bit of confusion there. Maybe it's just the name of it. And if it's going to be voted on in the record, I don't want other people to be confused about it also. So
we apologize. I agree. This, like I said, we were utilizing an existing plan from the parking lot is why, and we had to kind of come in with these temporary nodes. So
that makes sense.
there were a few projects, but yeah, that's a good point for the record.
All right, thank you. That's all I have, Commissioner or Chairman.
Okay, Susan or Chris, I've got a couple of questions. I'll jump in. First one is Todd. Now, I was surprised. I would have thought the city would have been the applicant here, but Scripps is the applicant of record. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Why is that? Why not us? I don't
Yeah.
particularly care. I just want to. It seemed odd to me.
I can answer that question. We were moving the project along, and some of you probably attended our citizen participation plan meeting where we did present both projects. But as we were getting close and we got this portion done and we got to our 90%, we determined it would be better if the Scripps research project went first, quote unquote, and then the parking lot went second. Ideally, if we wanted to do all the work, we could do it together in one project. But if it would be split, it's better to get the conduit and the sensors installed first, and then we can come, and if we do a parking lot project, we would do it then. Since the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, they received their grant from the state, we didn't want to make sure, we wanted to make sure they were fast track moving to make sure they got their stuff installed.
Thank you. A follow-up question on that. So was this originally intended to be part of the parking lot or the parking lot plan where we were gonna scrape part of the pavement off and re-angle parking. Was this part of that project and now it's a own separate project? So
Yeah, they're separate.
Okay.
Originally, they were together, yeah. Yeah.
a lot of it seemed familiar. That's why I just wanted to make sure that I was seeing the
Yeah.
right things.
Yeah.
Now, another question, which I know is of interest to a lot of people in Leucadia, is, well, how this is going to go on, the testing, some of it is meant to be long-term and part of a research study, but some of it is short-term, which will tell us hopefully when the bluff will stabilize enough to do some remediation. Is there a trigger that we would come across where we would say, now we feel we can do that? Is that, what's the process here? I mean, people want access to the beach. I mean, are we projecting this study will go for 6 months or a year? 5 years?
I can interject there. So the emergency CDP was for a total of 90 days,
Okay.
Which would mean at the end of July. However, we're looking hopefully for that to be a lot sooner, but that's on a separate track with coastal.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted that out on the record. This is, I think a lot of people coming in here have that question. So let's see. Well, Scripps is the applicant. Usually I would move on to an applicant presentation. I don't know if anyone from Scripps wants to speak on this item or if we feel Todd is, or if they feel Todd has made all the proper case. I don't know who would be here.
Anyway, I think is Adam on there?
If I could,
Mark?
if I
Hi,
could,
Mark.
Well, there's
Oh,
no,
yeah.
if I could just say a few words. I'm Mark Zumberg. I'm a geophysicist at Scripps Oceanography, and as you've heard, this project is an outcome of a grant we have from the state of California to study cliff erosion at a couple of sites in Southern California, and Beacon State Beach is one of them. The slide you're currently viewing shows where measurements have been made to date, most recently to monitor the slide. The next slide is the one that shows what we'll actually be putting in. And I just want to point out that just about everything there is going to be underground and invisible, except in the northwest corner, there'll be a mast that contains a GPS receiver, a eye-safe LiDAR, a weather station, and a radio link to some of the items, some of the sensors on the bluff that will have very short 6-inch long antennas poking out of the ground in the bushes. We may eventually come back and get permission to add a staff further down the hill if the one on top gives inadequate data. But mostly you won't see anything. In the northeast corner, there'll be the electrical drop and a small enclosure for electronics. The 110 volt power will end there, and it'll be low voltage that goes through all the conduits. So we just want to emphasize that it'll be pretty low profile as far as what people see.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. I mean, and thank you for doing this. Thank you. As you know, we're passionate about our bluffs, and we are personally, I'm happy that we're involved in this project with you.
Thank you. It's an interesting science opportunity for us.
Is there anything else from the commissioners? If there's not, then I would like to open this to public comment. And I know, I'm pretty sure I see Chandra has put her hand up immediately. I hope that's, and
Hey, Kevin.
yes. Chris, I see your hand is up.
I have to leave and come back on because I can't see the other shared screen anymore for some reason.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna pop out and back in, and hopefully it's problem's fixed.
Yep.
So I'll be right back.
Hey, Kevin, I have a quick question before we go to public. Is it okay if I point of order? Okay. Gentlemen from Scripps, is this anything similar to what this is just edification, similar to are you doing anything down in Del Mar where there's also been bluff failures? Is there any synergies to this, or is that a separate study, or are you involved in I'm thinking the trains and the bluffs that are collapsing over south of us?
Yes, we're doing similar work along the Del Mar train tracks. We're in the process of getting a permit from the North County Transit District to install not as extensive equipment, but very similar equipment in that area.
Are we the same formation? Assuming it's sand, I don't know what the official form is. It the same formation as Del Mar?
No, it's quite different, actually.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we have our Chris Ryan has returned. Everything sounds good. All right. I think now, Chandra, I think it is your time. You got 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair, fellow commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a few brief comments to supplement the June 22nd letter addressed to the California Coastal Commission contained in the public correspondence of the staff report. First and foremost, the overall concern of the local neighborhood is the amount of unpermitted work that has and continues to occur on the Beacon's bluff. The range of work includes the soil disturbance, the installation of monitoring equipment, among other actions. And as you all know and aware, any private property owner would not be able to disturb a bluff without the proper permits, emergency or otherwise. Second, it's unclear whether any communication or approval has been issued by the state parks consistent with the terms of the operating agreement. Third, we believe more detail should be provided regarding the need and amount related to a grading permit. Generally, grading of any kind is prohibited on a coastal bluff. And finally, we're looking to all agencies, the city, state parks, and the Coastal Commission to use this opportunity to provide a long-term solution that protects the bluff while maintaining public access. Thank you for the opportunity to share my comments.
Thank you. I see Matthew has his hand up. Staff, yeah, we got him, okay.
Can you hear me on your side there?
We can hear you now.
Great. My name's Matthew Gordon. I live on the south side of Beacons Beach. And I wanted to read a line from an article written in on Beacons Beach in the Oceanside News on 6/23/22. Seismic monitoring equipment has been installed throughout the bluff area, which records seismic activity on a daily basis and provides data to Scripps and the city. It's unlawful for any person to maintain, use, or undertake coastal development on any lot or premises without a coastal development permit. Violations of this division shall be treated as strict liability offenses regardless of intent. There can be no planning commission approval for Scripps CDP because the work is completed and the monitoring started weeks ago. No one knows if that work was done properly or according to the plans and what was done to the bluffs. The city must red tag Scripps work immediately and have it removed. The city cannot legally approve a permit for a project that's already been completed. The city has no permit to inspect and sign off on Scripps work because no permit was issued. The city's negligence in managing Beacons Beach has brought us to this point, and we have a project to observe Beacons Beach falling in versus repairing it. and approved with an approved erodible berm for close to the same 2.5 million cost as monitoring its collapsed. And we have the cost of doing the parking lot on top of that, which would more than cover the cost of remediating Beacons Beach so it was not having to be monitored for collapse. Spending $2.5 million on one of the most popular California state walking trails and taking away our community's equity for older surfers and younger families that can't use the stairs at Stone Steps and Grandview surf beaches for scripts makes no common sense. I would ask the city council to please go back to Tasha Horvath and ask her for a proper use of 2.5 million in funds and application of those funds towards repairing the path, which is used by over 500,000 unique visitors a year. Many of them are older visitors and local community who could not surf if it wasn't for the existing path. This would be and seem like a better use of grant money. And we will appeal the issue and issue a writ of mandamus if the CDP is approved by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Do we have any other speakers here? It doesn't appear that way. Let me move on. I think we are right on to Planning Commission deliberation.
Kevin, I do think we have Roberta.
I'm missing somebody here. Who's speaking now?
Oh, it's Dina.
Hi, Dina.
We do have another speaker, Roberta.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. I didn't see her on there. Roberta, go for it.
Oh, she's putting her hand
She's
up.
still here?
No.
I don't see her name.
She had lowered her hand, but I asked her to unmute if she'd like to talk.
Okay, so it looks like we're good.
Okay. Well, we move on at this point to actually I'm gonna close the public comment for now, and we move on to Planning Commission deliberation. We've got 4 sitting commissioners. Who wants to go first? Anyone have anything to say? Susan.
Yeah, well, my first question would be, because of the comment by Matthew about the permit issue, would be asking our legal person to give us some feedback on that particular public comment.
Tarquin, sorry, if you want, you can add to it, but I do just want to clarify that the temporary monitoring that is included as part of the scope of work is going through an emergency coastal development permit process with Coastal Commission. And that is due to the failure. The emergency work needed to be out there to make sure we maintain public access as soon as possible. And so that is under that scope of work. Should the Planning Commission wish to remove that component of just the temporary work, because that is the measures in which the gentleman is speaking of that is out on the site today. It's due to the landslide, but the remaining portions of the scope of work is not out there at this time. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then the other comment was regarding the trail. So the trail does qualify under repair and maintenance under the Coastal Act. And we've been coordinating with Coastal Commission on all of those items. So I just wanted to make sure I made those points clear.
Cool. On a quick question again, so the monitoring, the temporary monitoring that's there, is that part of this monitoring?
It was added on because typically when you do an emergency CDP, you need to come forward with a permanent CDP for the work. However, we can bifurcate that and continue on with Coastal Commission to obtain the emergency CDP for those mechanisms that are already out there. And then look at the scope of work of the more longer term the scope of work that is within the staff report.
I'm just trying to the point I'm trying to get at is the monitoring devices that are there now, will they be part of the Scripps monitoring system?
Yes, it will be all included in it.
Okay. And they went in on an emergency CDP?
Correct.
Okay. The emergency CDP, can you explain how that process went through? When and how did that happen? Was that
immediately. Sure. Immediately after the failure, we made contact with Coastal Commission and worked with them in providing them the emergency CDP, and it's in process.
Okay. So that's gone through at a staff level.
Correct.
Fantastic. Thanks. Well, personally, I want my trail back. I want beacons back. I want it opened. I see nothing objectionable about this plan. I'm overjoyed that Scripps were part of this process. The Bluffs, we are one of the owners of fragile bluffs in the southern coastal region here. Del Mar gets all the press, but when we get press, it's usually not pretty. So we want our bluffs maintained. We want beacons maintained, and I think Scripps is a great partner, and I'm going to support this project. Anybody? Chris.
I just had a question for Anna about how long the emergency CDP is going to take normally.
Any day now.
Okay.
Communications with Coastal Commission. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Susan?
I absolutely think it needs monitoring, and it's unfortunate that it's so expensive, but the problem is that if we don't do it, we have a liability then that we didn't do everything we could to make sure everything is safe. And safety, we already had a lawsuit with the Grandview Beach collapse because of loss of life there. So I don't think the city can afford to skip monitoring for safety. In this case, we now, fortunately, no life was lost at Acadia there at Beacons, but we don't know. We can't predict if the earth moves or not unless we monitor. And so I think it's very, very important. And I think that also I would like to make the point that I appreciate one of those comments that I had seen coming about the inevitability of the bluff collapsing eventually. It is going to probably happen again at some point. We don't know when, how many years in the future that might be. We should have probably, if we don't already, we should be looking at managed retreat in general. And I'm not so sure how that can happen with our city. But I do think trails down to the beach, everyone knows that these bluffs, that they are fragile and unstable. And it can happen pretty much any time. And we have signs that warn people. And so I don't know what else we can do to protect ourselves as a city, besides having more signs that explain, the fragility and the possibility that there can be collapse at any moment.
Thank you, Susan. Bob?
Yes, thank you. Quick question. There was one reference in the comment by, I believe, Chandra, who talked about a state park permit. Can Anna go through the proper order? So it sounds like they placed the monitoring devices on an emergency permit from the Coastal Commission. So that's what's there now. And we're being asked now to approve more permanent, if that's the right phrase, installation to conclude and conduct the study. Is that correct, Anna?
There's additional monitoring that was already planned for in the process under the grant money. So we just kind of put in since everything happened, we put in the temporary. So there are additional ones. Yes.
So they have the correct permits from the Coastal Commission to do the temporary ones, per Matthew's concern.
That is in the works with Coastal Commission. That's correct.
Okay. And then with regard to Chandra's comment about a state park permit, where does that fall in the, is that a relevant statement? Is that a relevant concern in terms of the approval process?
I know we have an agreement with the state, and I don't know if there's somebody from the other staff that can speak more to that. Is there anyone, Todd, in your group there? I'm not quite sure. But I know that we do have an agreement, and they are, we do correspond with the state.
Yeah, the state has given us basically authorization. I mean, the state essentially owns the land and we have a lease with them. So we have gotten authorization to do this.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that that was the legal arrangement. So I agree with the chairman that this is something that needs to be done in advance of repairs. You have to kind of know what you're dealing with before you can execute a repair plan. And if we don't know what's happening with the bluff, it seems to be wasteful to go through any sort of repairs and temporarily fix it if it just could possibly fall again. So I do think that the study needs to be completed. More facts need to be gathered. Safety first. I think everybody agrees that we all need to get access to the beach, and we need to use it. Everybody uses it, but we have to use it safely, and we don't want to get anybody hurt. So I would support the approval of the permit and get the monitoring process started sooner rather than later, so that we can get it fixed and we can find ways to use it.
Thanks. I know this is actually technically Leucadia State Beach, as is Grandview, and we have an agreement with the state. There's a specific plan going all the way back to the 80s that pretty much gives us the responsibility and of managing and maintaining this park. Chris, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, I just also wanted to show my support. I agree with comments made by my fellow commissioners about needing to monitor and get ahead of this now, so we can move forward with the future plans.
Great. I think I'd entertain a motion on this. Anybody?
I motion.
I'll move to.
Go ahead.
I would move to approve the resolution with conditions as put forth by staff.
I'll second.
That's moved by Commissioner Sherrod and seconded by Commissioner Ryan. If there's no further discussion, Dina, I'll ask you to call the question.
Ooh, we're muted, sorry. Chair Doyle,
Aye.
Commissioner Sherrod,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Prendergast.
Aye.
Okay, the vote passes 4-0 with, or I guess it'd be 4-0-1, with the one being our Vice Chair Dalton absent.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Anyone who's here for that, you're welcome to stick around. We got an exciting agenda ahead of us. So next up on our agenda, we have item 8B, which is the SB 9 Policy Implementation Ordinance. And this is case number policy 005-199-2022. Did I get that right? I see an extra 0 in there. This is a continuation of a study session by the Planning Commission to discuss implementation regulations for urban lot splits and 2-unit residential development in single-family zones, as allowed under Senate Bill SB 9. Jennifer Gates, I'm assuming you're here.
I'm here.
All righty. Well, we made it. Hopefully, you made a note exactly on how far we made it last meeting. I've got it open here. Perhaps we could just do a quick recap for anyone who's checking in here the first time, so they know what we're doing and where we're up to.
Sure, I can do that real quick. So I want to get into the meat of things. So we talked previously and introduced SB 9 prior discussions, which are in the staff report that were done at study session with City Council and Planning Commission, and started taking a look at the different sites and different zones and how our current development standards would apply to 2-unit development as well as urban lot splits. And so we talked a little bit about some of the different aspects and how large lots, how they would fit on large lots, but then also how small lots are so constrained that maybe there needs to be a different kind of standard as far as maybe an interior lot line of 0 versus 4. So we started that conversation, and we also, as part of that conversation, you guys had asked for some additional information, which was provided in the PowerPoint that was attached to the staff report, which is a combination of what was previously presented at different meetings, as well as this last meeting with a couple other edits. Today, I'm just going to focus on more on the discussion around the development standards so that I can get you a draft ordinance in August.
Let's I think you've recapped enough. Let's dive into it.
All right. So today's agenda is really focusing on these design standards. I do have 2 other zones to look at so you guys can understand a little bit more information. I also, Melinda, actually, in our office, did the drawings for us, and then also kind of created a table that kind of highlights what size development starts limiting how we can fit 2 800 square foot buildings. And so that's kind of what the focus of the conversation is going to be today. So again, SB 9 projects, they must comply with all of our objective zoning, subdivision, and design standards within our general plan and municipal code and other policy documents. And if the single family zone property does not allow for the 2 single family units, 800 square foot single family unit with 4-foot rear and side yard setbacks will be permitted. So if you have an existing and you're going to add, you have to continue to allow those 800 square foot units on these lots. So with that in mind, the other aspect about SB 9 is you can create new standards for SB 9 projects. But again, they need to meet SB 330, which means that we can't limit the ability to develop that lot.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I'm going to move on to R5 lot. So we did some different scenarios. This one was added previously. And I just wanted to, R3, R5, and R8 are kind of, they have some similarities, and I'm going to show you a slide here in a little bit also about those similarities. But again, 10-foot sides, a 25-foot front and rear, and then the building site coverage and lot coverage or building site coverage 35%, and it does have a floor area ratio of 0.6. So how does that lay out? So again, just for an example, this is the buildable area is in the dash, showing your 10-foot sides, 25-foot rear. So this is a 1,600 square foot building.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt really quickly, Jennifer. So we have your notes page on there. Do you want to share the full screen? I just
realized that. Thank you.
It may be easier to see. So
yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
That one. This one. There we go. That better?
You.
Okay.
Yes, great.
I have no notes because here you go. So again, going with the lot size for this example is 9,800 square feet. So what does that mean? Here we go. When we start divvying that building up, we can get the 1,600 square feet. We're going to meet the FAR and the lot coverage with that size building. So that's 3,200 would be the building site coverage. When we start getting constrained is when we do an urban lot split. So go to the next one. So again, sorry, just to clarify again, 10 foot is this line. When you see the hatch here, that is where they're encroaching into our required setbacks for the zone with the new setbacks allowed with SB 9. And what we're currently proposing is that everything within this area here of this proposed example building would have a height limit of 16 feet. That's what's currently being proposed. So here is the urban lot split with the 2 units on each. And this is to show you that we could still get the 2 800 square foot buildings. They would be limited in their heights, the ones in the back as the example right now, but you could do it. You can get the 2 with this proposed lot line and this reduced setback of 4 on each side. So this is to show that we could meet those requirements. This is to show an urban lot split with just these 2 units where there would be adjoining. So it would be like a duplex scenario. And then again, they could get the 2 units in there. They would again be 2 single stories, but just to show you the difference between if you split your lot down the middle versus if you are perpendicular to the street versus parallel to the street, and what our setbacks are looking like because of a new front yard that would be placed in the back. All right, we're going to look at R8. So these have side yard setbacks of 5 and 10, and then again, a rear of 25 and the front of 25. Their lot coverage is 40%, and then again, a 0.6 FAR. So this is an example showing a 10 on one side, 5 on the other, 25 and 25. So this is kind of one of those examples where you have a building that really doesn't fit within the parameters of this smaller example lot. We chose to use the smallest lot possible. So in the SB9 code with an urban lot split, your lot has to be 2,400 square feet minimum to be split into half. So this is an example, is if the city had a 2,400 square foot lot, somebody wanted to come in and do that development on that lot, what does that look like? What are the constraints of that lot? So the buildable area is actually just this box here. This larger box is actually an 800 square foot footprint.
Jennifer, do we have any idea what is the smallest lot?
We have lots around this size. There's not a lot of them. So we're going to see a discussion in a minute about 4,000 square foot and below. So we have around 500 lots that are 4,000 square feet or less.
Because I know Cardiff has many of those long, skinny lots that usually end up combined.
Right. So we have postage. So this is more like what I would call a postage stamp size. And then you have the long skinnies that you're talking about.
Okay. I'll let you go on. Thanks.
Okay. So, so you can see from this image that we do have a constrained buildable area. We do need to allow development. So what does that potentially look like? So this would be an example of a 2 unit. But what does that mean? So I have to allow 800 square feet, right? Our lot coverage is 960 square feet. But you can have an FAR of 0.6. So when looking at this, we were saying, okay, we can divide it up for building site coverage. It's around that 960 mark at 496 square feet, which meets those 4-foot side and rear setbacks, and it meets the front yard setback. But we only get a little bit of development that we could do a second story within. Under the current proposed standards. And so so the 800 square feet could push in any direction at this point to get to their 800 square feet, whether that's up, front, back, side. So that's what I want to focus our conversation on today with some caveats. But I'm going to show you a couple others. So this is if we did a lot line and we proposed 2 units under SB 9 on each one of those lots. What does that coverage then look like if we maintain the 4s to get 2 400 square foot buildings? So this is 800 square feet and 800 square feet. So this would be a 2-story building. This is a 6-foot front. It's how it would push all the way. This one we kept in just to show that it's really not feasible to split a lot that isn't longer, due to the fact that that front yard required setback from a shared driveway would make a building impossible in the back. So this is a 40 by 70 lot, just for an example, and you can see what our current requirements are kind of laid out all together for R3, R5, and R8, which we just talked about, the R5 and the R8 just a minute ago. So this is kind of just highlighting some of that. And then this is looking at what that looks like when we reduce it to the 4 feet on each side. So this is a 40 by 70 lot. So it increases that buildable area is what we wanted to highlight. So this is our table. This wasn't in your staff report. This is something we just finished. Actually, it was today. We started talking about when are these things actually triggering, depending on the width of a lot and then a length of a lot. And so we did some math, trying to look at different things. So we looked at original lot. So, looking at the zoning as it is, if we did a 2-unit development, if we did a lot split, and then if we did a lot split, and the ZLL is 0 lot line. So everything in red is basically where we're not meeting the standards of that zone. So this again is the R8 zone. So we start meeting those standards for like a 2-unit development once we hit around a 3,200 square foot lot, but not for an SB 9 lot split until if we do a 0 lot line at the 3,600 square foot parcel, or even a 4,000 square foot. So the larger the lot, obviously, and the more depth we have, the more ability we have to meet the underlying standards. So what I wanted to focus on is the actual development standards and to get direction. I feel like we can talk about some of the other direction that we received last meeting, as well as at the City Council and Planning Commission, in regards to the number of ADUs and when to include them. But we could also continue that part of that discussion, especially with the urban lot split and ADUs, if we want to even allow them, if the lot is not of a certain size. So today's focus is to provide direction for the constrained lots. So it could be in a number of different ways. So what potential standards could we reduce? So according to HCD, we already have a side and rear setback of 4 feet that can only be reduced from there. So are there certain instances in which we want a less than 4 feet for an urban lot split, maybe along that new interior side that we talked about last meeting? Do we want to allow a reduced front, either like the percentage of a lot length, like 10% or another number? Do we want to maybe allow a reduced rear setback if it abuts an alley or other qualifiers? And, in the flag lot situation, do we want to restrict when you can do a flag lot? Do we want to be more lenient on flag lots in regards to what that front setback would be? And also looking at height. So right now we limit the height to 16 feet within that reduced setback area. Is that a potential to allow greater height within that reduced setback? Maybe it's not all the way to the 4, maybe it's 6 or another number or a percentage again. Also, how do we want to treat building site coverage or FAR? We don't need to do all of these. I want feedback on what is most important to maintain as far as those development standards. And if there is flexibility potentially in some of these standards, that is for you guys to tell me about today. And then some of the questions that came up previously were to limit the impermeable surface and stormwater runoff discussion. And then I know there was questions about our mature trees. So with that, that is concluding my presentation. I have some additional information if you have questions, but this is the meat for today.
Great. I know we have, let's see, let me get myself back on my agenda here. Do we have any questions for staff at this point? We'll have a chance to deliberate. I'm going to keep the comment open so we can continue this. Looking for hands, nobody. Did we, I see a hand just went up. Susan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I'm wondering, does every unit require separate water and electric metering? That would be my first question. I have a few more questions. In terms of the third page of the presentation, on the Coastal Act, does that apply? California Coastal automatic if it's more than 2 units, or if it's only up to a duplex up to 2 units? So if we have more than 2 units created on the lot splits, let's say it's 4 units, just for example, does that trigger California Coastal review? And page 9, if we have to choose to permit ADU, JADU units, I noticed in the examples of A3, B3, C3, D3 on page 9 of the presentation, the total units might be 8 units if the lot coverage and the FAR met the standards for zoning, but could it possibly be up to 12 units with each of the 4 units having an ADU and a JADU? I'm not clear on that. And then on page 34 of the presentation, I saw where it showed that we have a lack of codification for preservation of mature trees. And that lack of codification of protection for mature trees neglects to address the climate crisis. And furthermore, it neglects to preserve Encinitas community character, which a lot of the character of Encinitas is our beaches, but a lot of our character is also the fact that we do have a lot of mature trees and have had a lot of California native mature trees in addition. So if removal isn't regulated at all, and we have this state law mandate, would a proposed project that alters community character by removal of mature trees be denied, for example, or no? So those are my questions.
Okay. All right, so every unit does need separate utilities. It needs to be able to be basically sold on its own. The Coastal Act does apply to all SB9 projects. However, it's different for SB9 because you can't have a public hearing for that coastal development permit. So what happens is that it'll be an ministerial coastal development permit. And if it's in our appeal area, then it could be appealed to Coastal Commission and a hearing could be held there. However, a hearing cannot be held here at the city. So a CDP does apply for all new development. The max number of units being proposed is 4 per lot with an urban lot split. So it'd be 8 total. So 4 per lot without an urban lot split, 4 per lot with the urban lot split, which equals 8 total. And then the mature trees, we do not have an ordinance, as you know, for mature trees yet. We are looking at the end of this year to move that forward. We need to initiate, we've been given direction to start that ordinance, but I still need to initiate the ordinance itself, and we need to do some more understanding around that. We can also talk about that as part of when we talk about our native plant meeting that we'll be having later this in early August. So there may be other things that come out of that meeting too, or direction from council. Anna, did you want to add anything about the trees?
I actually first had just a point of clarification on one of the items that was asked about the 4 units on one lot. That should be 2 primary units with ADUs. So 4 primary, it doesn't allow for 4 primary units on one lot. It's 2 unit development on one lot. However, the ADUs make it the 4. So I want to provide clarification on that. As far as trees, we have one standard on replacement of trees, but no specifics on mature trees. So that would be the effort that Jennifer was talking about that we would go through.
Great. I'd like to jump in with a question now. We're talking about our objective design guidelines, and I know we did a lot of work preparing objective design guidelines. Are those guidelines the ones that would apply to these projects?
We would apply the objective design standards that we created last year.
Okay, and now I know I was going through my notes trying to find a nice version of those that's not highlighted and underlined in red. Do we have a final format for that document? Because I think that's really critical to all of us here.
Yeah, we'll get that to you. It's on our webpage.
Okay, fantastic. I've looked, but
sometimes it's hard to find things.
We have an enormous amount of data on our website, and most of my work for the last 5 years has been figuring out where stuff is.
Right.
I see Bob's nodding his head. He's been in the same boat. We all have.
I would be happy to send the link where all of our land use documents are.
Cool. I'm pretty sure I have that. It's just wasn't sure if our new design standards were in that compilation. I'm gonna, since I'm talking, Jennifer, I'll share a couple of my thoughts on this. I know that
Sorry, do we have any public comment?
Oh yeah, that would be a great. We only have.
Because you were starting to get into comments. I was just.
Thank you very much. We have Jacqueline Covey has stuck around with us this whole time. I don't know if she'd like to speak. This is the time for public comments at this point. Jacqueline?
I don't see a hand.
Yeah. No hand. You're welcome to speak if you want. I'll reopen public comment if you need to. For now, I'm going to public comment was open. Actually, I'll leave it open. There's only one attendee present tonight. So next up would be commission deliberation. I mean, I'd say at this point we could start sharing our thoughts, Jennifer, right?
Mm-hmm. And I can bring up any of those images, or I have the images from the previous PowerPoint as well.
And thank you for sharing your presentation, your PowerPoint presentation earlier. That was a big help. A lot of times I don't see those until the very end, but this was spot on. I know that I watched the areas where we ended up in the setback area, and personally, I know I would prefer to see the height consideration be kept at the most protected. I'd rather not see anybody I'd rather push things closer or increase the floor area ratio or the lot coverage as opposed to, you know, raising above 16 feet if we're within, you know, 4 feet of each 4 feet of the property. That's, I could be convinced otherwise, but for me, I feel that's probably the thing that's going to most affect people. Looked at the narrow lot splits, and I would love to see them be allowed to have a 0 lot line if they were to abut against each other and be built that way. I'm wondering now, let's say we have one of the narrow lot lines. Let's see if I can find one here. Something split up the middle. I'm looking at your, yeah, so it's like page 20 on your analysis. I think that's the 4,900 square foot lot. Let's see, maybe that's not the best example. Looking for, yeah, say page 26, the 2-unit development on urban lot split. This is a 2,000 square foot lot. It's on page 26 in the piece you sent me. Let's see, I've got so many things open here.
Yes, just one second. I'll open it.
So here we have 2 long, skinny buildings side by side with, you know, an 8-foot alley between them, 4 feet on each of the different properties. Now, if we were to say, hey, you can move in and go a 0 lot line here, could we, because, you know, they've got 8 feet of side setback total here. If we were to say 0, could we, you know, have them skinny over a little bit from that 4-foot outer setback?
In other words, make a townhome, make it an attached.
Yeah, but you know, what I'm thinking is like if we give away the 4 feet on either inside section, could we then say
8 feet on the edge?
Could we get 5 or 6 on the outside?
Right.
Or is that
on the outside? I couldn't change it because of the SB 9 being the 4 foot.
So
can only reduce.
So we couldn't offer that you can have extra on the setback, but you have to give up something else. We can't even offer that option to them.
I'll double check. I don't think so. I think the way it was written, but I'll
yeah, it
or
seemed
the
like
way
a long shot.
HCD's guidance is, but
Yeah.
we can talk to legal about that.
It was a long shot. I know HCD probably is going to get a little, they stick to the rules there. But regardless, it would be nice if we could end up with a trade-off there. But in a situation like this, I could see a 0 lot line being acceptable. Now, you also mentioned a possibility of pushing a 0 lot line up next to an alley. You know, I'm picturing again, Cardiff and downtown Encinitas have a lot of these small lots that, you know, they already have little garages and outbuildings built right up to the alley wall. So we have 0 lot lines there, and I can see that as being tolerable. I'd rather see that than see them smushed to the middle and then get taller. Hey,
can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
For clarification and for discussion purposes, would this be so like this example right here, if you only allowed the 4 foot, the width of this building is limited to 12 feet, which would be 11 feet on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So is it situations when they have a constrained lot, so the lot's it's not long enough, so it's too short to do the flag lot situation, that, you know, we're incentivizing a perpendicular attached product instead, but limited in the situations where basically your lot width has limited your ability to get a decent width of a building? I'm asking, this is just a question that I had for discussion. Like, are there certain scenarios in which you would want the 0 lot line and others you don't want the 0 lot line?
Well, I mean, the 2-unit development with an urban lot split, basically we're looking at what I would hope to see as a duplex. I'd rather see them merged in the middle, much like so many lots I've seen throughout Cardiff and downtown Encinitas. It's just makes sense. I don't want to create silly looking buildings that don't work. Now, in this instance, I can see if you look at the next page where I think that's where you actually have the same lot with everyone kind of smushed together. And so we've got our two 800-foot lots. The two in the back would work as primary residences. They're 800 feet. They don't need to go tall. They don't, or I guess they could, but not within that crosshatched setback. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the two at the front of the 416 square foot lots, those would be the ADUs.
It wouldn't be an ADU. Actually, it would be the second unit, because remember the two units you have to allow the 800 square foot.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just an example that we were showing. If you did one 800 square foot building in the back, and then an 800 square foot in the front, that maybe is the 2-story, because you could get 2 stories in this location. We wanted to show this as just kind of an example how you could fit 2 800 square feet. However, you are going to go over your lot coverage automatically to allow it. But we just wanted to show this as an example.
So the lot coverage, so the next qualifier then becomes you're exceeding your FAR. So thus the result being you cannot do the front 2 units in that situation.
You can do the 2 units because we have to allow the 2 units. You can't do an ADU. You won't be able to do any ADUs.
Okay, so wait. So under this, I'm sorry, Chairman, is it okay if we?
Yeah, please. Let's. Anyone wants to unmute here and have this discussion on.
So in this situation.
And I see. I'm sorry. I see Susan and Chris have been behind the windows with their hands up. But but Bob, keep going. Susan, did I miss you?
Well, as far as the question you were talking about, this zero lot line possibility, it seems to me as long as it meets the lot coverage and FAR requirement for the zone, it's up to the builder, isn't it, where to place the unit?
Well, they've been restricted to 4 feet, so we would have to allow them to go less than that 4 feet in order. So they don't have the option to go to a 0 lot line when they're side by side unless we allow it. Specifically, I believe. Is that correct, Jennifer?
So under SB 9, you have to allow 2 unit developments on each lot. That is a minimum of 800 square feet. So the question comes into play is, all right, we're going to have some lots that are constrained for these 2 units. Do we want to basically provide them the guidance, the standards, when they have constrained lot issues on how we would like them to place it? So we want you to maintain your height, or we want you to maintain your front, but we're going to allow you, we're going to go over the FAR or the lot coverage, and we recognize that kind of thing up to a certain amount. Are there development standards in the 0 lot line aspect allow them to get a wider building because their width of their lot is such that the building would be super skinny and wouldn't really be consistent with the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
So the applicant can kind of negotiate that with the planning department?
Well, we can either set standards around it, or we can see what they give us to say, well, I need 2 800 square feet, and this is what that's going to look like.
All right, so I apologize. So what you're telling me is the law says they get 2 units, and they have then each unit has to be a minimum of 800 square feet. But in this situation, we would then violate the FAR. And the state is basically saying, that's okay. Because the qualifier, the primary qualifier is 2 units, 800 square feet each. And I'm sorry, it doesn't, you have such a tiny lot, but we still have to give that to you. So thus you have to go up. Well, what if I need to go up 3 stories to do that? Now it's silly to do that, but we're looking at the exceptions here. So you've said, oh, you can go up double the 416 square feet, because clearly that's not 800. Now you can go 2 stories. Oh, but you have to maintain a 16-foot height limit, not higher, but you would exceed the FAR provision. So why should we allow them to do that if they already exceed the FAR provision? I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, the smallest, the only thing you can do here is 416 square feet. Tough toenails, you have a small lot. Where do we, how many variables are they going to blow through until they get their 800 square feet? Yet you've said that we can't go less than 4 feet on the side because that's one regulation that they're holding to. Why are they holding to that one and not other ones? And thus, if your lot's just too darn small, you're out of luck.
So the limitations that they put were 4-foot sides. You can go smaller than 4 feet, but you can't go larger for the side and the rear. They also said that for an urban lot split, your lot size has to be a minimum of 2,400 square feet.
Right.
So 1,200 each side.
Yeah.
And then they said with each lot, you get 2 units, a minimum of 800 square foot each. And whatever other standards need to be modified to allow you to get 800 square feet, we have to allow them. But it doesn't say that we can't create standards to implement around that. We just can't limit it to less than 2 800 square foot units, if we so choose. If you want to keep it flexible and allow somebody to come in and just propose 2 800 square foot units, however they can fit it on the lot, then, we could do that.
Now, question for you, Jennifer. If we do allow that, they put in their 800 square feet, however they get, we put some height limitations, we say no stories, whatever. Can they also say, and now I'm going to cram 2 ADUs in the remaining space? I mean, how is that going to interact with
yeah. So we wrote it specifically so that if they did the 2-unit development with an urban lot split, that they could not get the ADUs unless they met our underlying development standards.
Okay, and I think that's probably the biggest risk because, we will have 2 800 square foot units. 1 story, 2 story. I think I can see places where a 2-story would go. If it was in Cardiff, where basically, and all the 2 stories turn into 3 stories because, of course, everyone builds half of their unit into the hillside, which makes it a basement. So, there's ways around that. I find still, for me, the biggest criteria is going to be the height. I mean, if you've got one of these little lots, you're in a very dense neighborhood already. We don't have tiny lots like this in big neighborhoods, in large lot neighborhoods. We have dense developments there. And, I'm less concerned with the floor area ratio. If we cover too much, or, the lot coverage, if we cover too much of the lot, it's a small lot. It's going to have minimal impact as opposed to a similar ratio on a large project. That would be horrendous. The runoff would cause all sorts of troubles. But that's all I got right now. Who else? Chris, have you had anything to?
I'm sure. So I'd like to go back to page 26. That's the 2 skinnies with the 4 foot on each side. I don't think we should encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should encourage basically more of a duplex type situation and try to encourage a 0 lot line toward the center, rather than limiting people to a 12-foot residence. That's just my view on how this would look, like if this was built. So I think for a situation like this, we should allow zero lot line to the center where the properties meet. And I also like the idea that you had, Kevin, about the zero lot lines if the property backs up to an alley, or we could probably come up with some other things in addition to an alley where it might be appropriate to go to a zero lot line in addition to an alley. I don't know. It's difficult because if we look at page 27 and how something like this would look, if you have two-story ADUs attached to one-story other residences, how does that also fit with our objective standards? And if you start to have to go into the objective standards now too. So I guess that would be up to decisions made at the plan, in the city planning on whether or not it would adhere to objective standards. If you go into a design, they would have to take all of these things into account. So I think our biggest problem really is at the small lots. I think that's where we're running into some of our biggest concerns and how this would actually look. What I don't want to do is I don't want to encroach on other neighbors and how this would affect them if something like these go in next door. But I also don't want to encroach on the property rights people have in order to take advantage of this new law.
Yeah, when I look at, you mentioned page 26 and the two long skinnies.
Yes.
And I know that in the Cardiff specific plan, I think it's the R11 and the R15, one of them has to have a really deep notch in between the two buildings, which always looks silly. I think that was the R15 and the R11. I could be wrong in this, but what I would like if they were merged together, I like being able to mandate a notch in the front so that they have the appearance of separate homes instead of one monolith. And I think we can just steal that direct from the Cardiff specific plan. And this isn't, we don't have to require, I don't know if we can or should require this, but if we're going to be showing examples of what you can do with your absurdly small lot, we shouldn't show them anything that we don't really want to be seeing again. Susan, you got something?
Yeah, I hate to buck the trend here, but
Okay.
But I do think that having separation between dwellings is a really good thing in terms of being able to get natural light in through windows, getting air in through windows. Those interior lot line, if it is 0 and we have the buildings butting up to one another, then they have a common wall. That's a completely different feel and category for a project than having a detached unit. And it's a completely different interior feeling. There's noise from the common wall. There's the potential for argument between the owners because, something at the roof area could be wrong, or, there's a lot of considerations. And maybe if the lot is so small, we can just have this smaller development and they're tiny homes. That's not a horrible thing to have happen, because a tiny home is inherently probably going to be an affordable home. So I'm not a fan of 0 lot line development, and I think it tends to make the spaces undesirable in terms of how they function. So my 2 cents.
Fair enough. I mean, I see it, this makes more sense as a duplex to me. And, in the certain places, we already have lots that look like this. I think in Cardiff, the lots are 25 feet wide. And this example here, I think they're each 20 is. So it's, we're going to see them.
Well, I understand. Yeah, I do see that logic, but I still don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, a 12-foot, I've lived in Manhattan and I lived in a railroad apartment that was literally 10 feet wide and really, really long. And there was no hallways. There was just doors leading to the next room, to the next room, to the next room. And it was an unusual living situation, I'll say. You know, furniture, coffee tables, there's all sorts of things that just don't work easily that way. And maybe it will be you know, the tiny home concept here, but you know, I doubt they'll be affordable regardless. You know, I was just checking average price per square foot, or what was it? The average price for a sub 1,500 foot attached apartment in Encinitas was like $940,000. So affordability is going to come to an extent by design. I mean, but I think it's asking a little much. Attainable is what I hope for. Bob, do you want to speak?
Yeah, real quick, if you could go to page 27, Jennifer. So just out of curiosity, how do you access the back unit? Do you walk down the 4-foot, you walking through the front house, or are you walking down the 4-foot setback along the side? So if you lower the setback on the sides, which is an option, I don't even know how you get to the back unit. Also, if the street is front, I would be in favor of inverting this so that the massing is in the back. So if the 416 square foot unit has to be 2 stories, I'd much rather have that massing in the back away from the street and a 1-story building in the front of the street. I don't know if that's something that, because then you're just, I don't know, you're going to be casting shadows, I guess, on your own unit. If she wants to do it as the developer, that's fine, but I don't like the idea of massing on the front of the street versus the back. Also, I read in the paper during the week, and I brought it up last time as it relates to this. Clearly, underlying city designs have to come into play in terms of canopy and greenhouse gas and climate action plan issues. So maybe going forward, I'd love to see how those underlying conditions relate to these sites in terms of what else has to be done if they're required for trees or green space or open space on their lot. So laying that out would be important for me just as a visual. But I also read it when I was getting to the city of San Diego required, so let's just take this one situation here. We've got 4 cars, possibly 8 cars now moving onto the street in neighborhoods that don't have enough parking as it is. So I noticed that the city of San Diego adopted, and maybe Jennifer, you could comment to it, that units in the coastal zone will be required to have a parking stall. So can we also include a requirement for a parking stall? Thus taking the cars off the street?
We are requiring, the state said that you require 1 per unit.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing, unless the city wants to do less. So we are proposing the 1 per unit minimum. And then the other clause in there was if it was in a high priority transit area, which for us would be just right here around the transit station.
Okay.
They're allowed 0 parking under the state law.
So to me, it'd be visual, again, to put cars here. I understand the layout, but we're also talking about adding 4 cars. There has to be room for 4 cars. So it's 20 feet as you've laid out here, enough to park 4 cars?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
8 by 18.
8 by 18, and how wide is the lot here?
These are, each footprint is, so each side is 20. This is a 40-foot lot total.
Okay. So yes, you can get 32. So 32 feet, but then all of a sudden, if a car parking stall is 8 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 40 feet wide on the lot. So now the car parking is encroaching up on the 4-foot side setback, correct?
correct? Is it 8.5? What is it here? Sorry, 8.5?
8.5.
Sorry, I missed a half.
So do we have to then provide a variable for that, or not a variable, a variance, or the car again? So how do you, now you're talking about 32 feet, now we're down to, we've extended beyond the side of the house. I don't even know how you get to the back. I guess that's their problem. You have to take a helicopter to the back. I don't get it.
So again, that's what they'll figure out. This is just for discussion purposes. So if I was personally going to do this, I would actually do a fourplex. I would do a unit. I'd do the one unit on the base, one unit on top, one unit on the bottom, one unit on top. If I was doing the project, and then you could push it towards the back and do, you know, two like tandem parking or garage inside. People want garages these days.
So you're saying that you do 8 units here, upstairs?
I would do the
downstairs?
just 4 units, two on the base and then 2 on the second floor. Instead of what I'm showing is just the layout on just 4 on the base, on the ground level.
Right.
So fourplexes are very common if you like LA area. It's more of a traditional house style in like the 40s when we started doing multifamilies in a different way that were more suburban.
So to the chair's comment earlier about going subterranean, clearly it's much more expensive to do that. But if could they do that here and put their parking under? Super expensive. But would that be allowed under the current guidelines?
I would ask Anna if our parking standards allow subterranean parking elevators.
So we currently do not allow a mechanical parking to count towards required parking, but they are able to do basements if they have a qualifying basement to have a basement garage.
But they'd have to pull in. They couldn't do an elevator.
Right. No, they'd have to pull in. So I was just referencing his comment earlier about, you know, basically 2-story buildings, but have a third because they're of their quote basement. I know that's effective in Del Mar also, but in this particular case, you could make your basement your parking garage.
Yeah, you can see an example of that on Santa Fe. Actually, the new house that's being built has that configuration.
Mm-hmm. What address?
Anna, I can't remember what the cross street is. It's 2 blocks from Vulcan.
On Santa Fe?
On Santa Fe.
Oh, the new one's on the corner?
Yep, the new one on the corner on the left.
Got it.
There are a lot of homes that do basement garages. So they just need to qualify for a basement definition so that it doesn't count as a story. And that's been done a lot throughout Encinitas.
And to be fair, much more common is going to be people will use that as livable space.
Yes.
And just to keep things moving on, now, Susan, you've had your hand up for a while, and
I was just going to point out that the parking doesn't have to be covered, right?
No, but
it can be open.
And Chris, I know you also had your hand up forever. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. No, it's totally fine. I was just going to say, as to Bob's point on page 27 with the massing to the back, I agree that aesthetically that would look better. We would have to do something about the 16-foot height limitation, though, if we were going to require the massing to the back instead because of the setback in the back. And also, you know, for all of these designs, I mean, the market's going to dictate whether or not developers are going to develop. So I think we might want to keep that in mind too. Developers aren't going to develop products that they don't think people are going to buy or people are going to live in. So I think we can imagine some scenarios that are pretty bad for this small lot size, but I don't think that most of them would come into fruition. I think that the developers would want to build a product that they could sell.
Or property owners. So remember the other thing about the 2-unit development with an urban lot split, the urban lot split requires that affidavit, which we are looking into, for the affidavit to be signed that's saying that they would live there for 3 years. So in cases that some of the instances right now that we have of urban lot split, you know, if they're interested property owners asking us questions.
Right.
And they're not necessarily looking to maximize their lot. They just are looking to split it and sell maybe one unit on that lot.
Right. And
put it in an ADU.
And put in a home that they want to live in and they want to live next door to.
Live in or next door, yeah.
The other option, of course, is that's people's retirement plan where they will live there for 3 years and then take the money that they use from selling the first one to buy.
Right.
And, you know, when they leave, they'll have an extra house to sell. So that I think is probably going to be the most common way. I mean, although a lot of people are just going to say, no, I'm not moving. I want to live here forever. I just need a smaller home and I'll sell the other half to somebody else. And, you know, I'll still be here, but now $1 million richer, minus whatever it costs to build the units. It's gonna be interesting to see how this gets developed. Now, question here, let's look in the lot you're showing here. Now, if they came in and says, hey, we're going to build this thing, but we need to go higher than 16 feet, otherwise we can't get our 800. At that point, would staff, or I'm not sure who would make that call, would they say, well, yeah, geez, you're right, and allow them to go up to 2 stories and exceed that height? Or suppose, you know, we're going to get these situations where something's got to give. Do we have to have explicitly stated in which direction it's going to give, or is it kind of like a density bonus where we say we need a concession or a waiver and this is the one we want?
So the purpose of this conversation was to try to be unlike the density bonus where this is what I want and it could be this is what the city wants. I am going to have one small caveat with this is based on whatever you guys decide, if you do want to move forward with allowing greater flexibility in certain constrained situations, I do need to have further conversations of what the implications are with potentially Prop A.
Mm-hmm. So we could, one of the options in front of us is just say, heck no, there are no concessions. This is what it is. You get what you get, what state law says. And if you want to exceed that, then.
Or if you want the 800 square feet, you do it however you can fit it.
And now suppose, as pointed out, I mean, some of these lots are especially small. Suppose they say, well, the only way to fit it, there was a couple back where we had a tiny little lot in the middle of a big field. And they say, well, we got to go 300, we got to go 3 stories because, you know, each floor is only going to be whatever, 275 square feet. I mean, could they say that's what we need? And could then, I'm not sure who would be the decision maker on this. Somebody on staff is all I.
It'd be staff.
Could somebody on staff, they say, yep, that seems right to me. 3 stories is where you got to go.
Looks like on pause, but it would be a ministerial decision.
Yeah, it has to be administrative, ministerial. You know, it is a common practice for staff to ask for alternatives and push for not going down that route. But I think we would probably have to see what our purview is and determine that.
So, I mean, I would like to, you know, put in something here, if permissible, that would say under no circumstances will you exceed 2 stories. And then, you know, that would force people to sprawl it out a little bit. You know, as I pointed out on these little lots, if the lot coverage exceeds where it should be, I would be okay with that, because at most we're going to be talking about, you know, another 600 or 800 feet of permeable space if we're lucky. You know, to exceed the lot coverage on a acre lot would be very impactful, but on this tiny little lot, it would be it would be minuscule. So I don't know, I'd rather see it, rather than see it get tall, I'd rather see it spread out towards the edges. And I think I agree with maintaining the front setback is probably most critical, because we've already dealt with lots like this where some of the houses built before, again, Cardiff pops up. There are sections where you kind of expect to see the houses all lined up the same distance from the street. And you'll see periodically ones that stick out a little bit. They look weird. They look like, snaggle teeth. Susan, you want to jump in? So you get.
Well, one thing that I wanted to say is that I think we would have the right to have an objective standard of having permeable driveway paving if they're doing SB9. And that would help because we're getting a lot more lot coverage if we're allowing all these units. I mean, from what Anna's answer was to my prior question, my understanding is that it could be 2 primary units and then, 2 secondary units. And then you could still have on the front primary unit, let's say, of each, an ADU and a JADU, if the lot size is big enough that it accommodates that, which means your total number of units is 8. So you're talking about potentially quite a bit more coverage. I think it would be a reasonable objective standard to require permeable driveway paving. I think especially when they have a certain number of units, And I also have a follow-up question for Anna about if that is 8 units, let's say, that are developed on a fairly sizable property where the lot split and we have 2 primaries and so on, does one of those 8 units have to be affordable because of our inclusionary housing policy?
Answer is no. So ADUs do not count as a unit towards that. So it would be a total of 4 primary units. So they would be required to pay our affordable housing fee.
So it's an in lieu fee?
It's an in lieu fee that we have now for 500 square feet or more of addition or development of a primary unit.
How much is the in lieu fee now?
It is depending on how many units, it's a percentage of $20 per square foot.
Can we triple that?
No, we can't. It's based on a nexus analysis that looks at the need for affordable housing in our community and what that price point would be.
When was the last time that was?
We did it last year.
So they pay $20 a foot to not have it as an affordable, and that goes into a general account somewhere. And
goes into the affordable housing fund.
So the whole purpose of the ADU is, as we talked about previously, was to create, and we had numbers, and then Bruce Ehlers came on and talked about the number of ADUs that were quote affordable. So we're out allowing ADUs, but basically people can buy out.
You have an option if you can pay the fee or you can provide an ADU at that affordable level. So you can do that, but it is automatically an in lieu fee. Sorry, I'm going to go to the bigger unit. Thought we were talking about. So that is an option that you could do if you so choose. The conversation that we had with City Council and Planning Commission during that study session in, I think it was March, we talked about for when you're doing a 2-unit development and an urban lot split, we don't have to allow ADUs. The city can choose to not allow ADUs at all. So when we did the original emergency ordinance, we said, okay, you can allow ADUs. The direction we were given is to allow ADUs if it meets the underlying development standards. We said, okay, so that's what's being proposed. And then we had a discussion about it in March. Do we want to continue that? Do we want to, add on affordability covenants for these ADUs in these situations that are doing both? So when we allow up to the 8 units, do we want a percentage of those ADUs to actually be affordable? But you guys can talk more about that as well. But the direction I was given at that time was, at that study session, was no.
Okay.
I'd be open to reconsidering that. You know, we want the ADUs because ADUs are either attainable or affordable. I'd heard it was a higher number. I remember Bruce shared his numbers, and it was 25% on average of the ADUs were coming in as affordable, which is better than most of our housing element sites when we look at the total units, but not as awesome as I had hoped. I also know a lot of other jurisdictions have not allowed 8 units on a urban lot split with duplexes. I mean, some of them allowed, usually I've heard it 1 ADU. I think, I'm trying to remember, I don't have the whole chart here, but 6 units on a urban lot split as opposed to 8 was one of the common numbers I'd seen floated around. You know, so I'm torn because personally I think ADUs are going to be very important to our development, but I'm be open to keeping them at 8 as we have been. But if we can mandate that one or both of these could be affordable, I would be open to that. I think that would be an awesome step forward. I don't know how well it would fly at council level. Susan, I see you have your hand up. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm in support of ADUs because I do think they're inherently leaning toward being affordable. And I would definitely support that at least one of the developed units would be an affordable unit if we allow up to 8. Because as you know, affordable housing is such a big priority that we really need.
If we can, have a question on, I think it's kind of granular here, but if Susan's comment about permeable driveways is something that we can mandate, on the commercial side, roofs, I think it's not Title 24, but maybe staff knows the answer, required to have basically a white roof for reflective purposes so it wouldn't generate the heat. Can that be something from a design standard that can be incorporated? If we can incorporate, permeable driveways, can we require certain type of roof materials?
I'll let Anna, I don't know if we currently have standards in regards to roof treatment.
Yeah, I think the only, it would be a building code. So there are no planning issues on types of roofs, but we can inquire about the building code requirements. And I guess whether or not we can require them, I guess it would depend on the state law and what we're allowed to place on it. But it sounds like that wouldn't restrict gaining the 2 800 square foot homes.
No, I mean, we require electrification. Why, and we're putting other codes in place. Why wouldn't we be able to be most energy efficient and reduce our global warming capacity? Because we're now increasing our lot. We have now 8 homes where we once had 1, and clearly the surface area is increased.
So a white roof would assume a flat roof situation.
Does it?
I've never seen a white roof. I've seen other kinds of roof materials, but not a white roof on a pitch.
Right.
I worked in another city that did not allow white roofs because of glare issues from neighboring properties, but that was more of a hillside community than we are here. I mean, we do have hillsides, so I'm just putting that out there for consideration. But if you have examples of a white roof that wasn't, I'd be curious.
No, it's from the commercial side, and there was a building code for energy efficiency. So
yeah, I've seen that in the white rocks and things.
Yeah, no, not rocks. They're
yeah, I've seen different treatments though for that reduction.
Right.
For energy.
So we're increasing by a couple fold the load here and just surface area. So
I just pulled up a percentage online. It says a white roof at the hottest point of the day, which is 5 p.m., is 8.5% cooler, more energy efficient than a non-white roof. And I was looking up, I remember there was a famous economist who pointed out, or maybe it was a physicist, if we just all went around, if everyone in the United States painted our roofs white instead of black, we would shave a half point over our global energy footprint.
bingo.
It's and I've seen lots of sloped white roofs. I mean, the glare issue is one I hadn't actually thought of, but you know, I know they're common in other places. You know, my wife's from Sweden. I know that's one of the common colors. You know, although the terracotta is also.
Say light slate and terracotta is what I'm used to seeing.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, if it is something, if it was something we could mandate, let's try and get the best we can out of this, because it's not like a density bonus where, like, if it costs a little more, it doesn't mean we can't do it, because this is about can they build their 800 square feet. That's what it's mandating. Is that correct?
Can they build their 800 square feet, and what are those objective standards? They need to be objective, but I think with any standard, we want to connect it, right, to what's that nexus between what we're asking for and what that impact is. So with GHG reduction, you know, with larger footprint, you know, are there ways to reduce that with the permeable driveways and other improvements on the lot? You know, how do we meet our stormwater requirements, collect rainwater? I mean, there's all those things with these constrained lots that would have more impact. So we can look at more at that.
It's just a thought. Thank you.
And I see Susan.
Yes, I had a question. For these residences, if they're detached, do they require, or does our city currently require that they have photovoltaic solar panels on the roof, you know?
You're talking about single family units are required to have solar installed.
I think in the interest of keeping this moving forward, Jennifer, I know you're after something specific, and we've been giving you lots of rambling opinions.
You're fine. I can come forward with, based on what you guys have talked about and what the concerns are that have been raised. If there's other thoughts, you know, I can throw out like what that language could look like when we meet in August, and you guys can respond to that at that time.
Okay, I'll consider that. I want to hear from Chris. I see your hands up here.
So I wanted to say I do support the requirement if we're going to go to the 8-unit lot split. I do support the requirement of 1 unit, so it could be 1 unit on each of the split lots being a low income unit.
Now, do we shoot for 1 unit on each of the split lots, or so out of 8 units there would be 2 affordable?
Don't you think we would have to? I don't know how we could. I don't know how we could require it only on one and not the other. I just, maybe we can. I don't know.
It's messy. I would be. I think we'll be proposing this as a recommendation to council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think we should push for this. Now, if there's 2 ADUs on each of these lots, and one of them should be affordable, deed restricted, say for 55 years.
Love it.
You know, as opposed to in perpetuity, which.
Well, perpetuity.
Yeah, let's either way, I think we can offer that as an option, whichever way we go. That can be one of the little triggers that council can tweak. But the exact, 55 years or in perpetuity, I won't see the end of it regardless. So I would say if we can put that in, Jennifer, that's one I think we were all finally have clear consensus on. I mean, it's such a complicated piece with so many moving parts, and the minuscule lots are the ones that are, we're trying to imagine what kind of horrors could be created with those lots. And, I think in actuality, mostly those lots won't get developed in that way. Somebody might try and we might end up with some oddball structure here, but I think we've done most of what we can to try and keep that under control. I mean, people aren't going to build houses that they can't walk to, because no one will buy that house. It's like, oh, you just have to knock on your neighbor's door. He'll let you in here and through the back door of his place. It's just not going to happen. So I think the realities of life will kick in, and some of these minuscule lots, I bet you once we get down to lots that this 2,000 square foot lot, there's probably a dozen. I mean, I know we have some that are, the Cardiff lots I know jump in 25 by, I forget how deep, 75 or 100. I think they're 100. So they're 2,500 square foot lots. And we'll see those. And even those, nobody's ever considered trying to develop them individually. They always end up with either duplexes smushed together or a single home occupying 2 lots. I'll pass it to Susan.
What I was going to add to the 0 lot line consideration is that I would make that a variance request. I would not do it carte blanche, so that just anyone, even if their lot's huge, could do it. I think it should be on a needed basis, not just an everybody can do it. A variance request that is likely to be approved for certain conditions, or something that staff could work on the wording of better than I can.
The only problem is that we can't do a variance because we can't have a public hearing. So, but going with what the second part of what you said is under certain situations, right? So that's what we'll propose in the ordinance is, probably a lot width. If it's less than X feet, then that's a possibility. And we'll explore how that plays out and if it's feasible to enlarge the other sides. Anything else?
That sounds good.
I'm running out of comments. I would probably just start repeating myself.
You're fine. All right. I'll see you in August.
Wait.
We have
So
Al and Chris, I see your hands there as well. Sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Oh,
I didn't raise.
either way. So I just wanted to double check because I didn't see it, but maybe I missed it. We had talked about 800 square feet being the maximum for the ADU. Are we going to the 1,200?
So probably for the new ADUs on the urban lot split, it would be the 800 max. If that is what is being suggested. However, when you do a 2-unit development, the HCD guidance now is that it needs to meet the state law requirements, which is a minimum of 800 square feet. So if we want to limit those as well, then you guys can propose that. Right now, we are saying to just follow our current municipal code, which does allow up to 1,200, but again, that it still needs to fall within that lot coverage requirement if you go above 800 to the 1,200. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Anyone wants to jump in?
Yeah, real quick, what is the definition, and I probably can read it in the code, but I'll plead ignorance, of a JADU versus a regular ADU?
Sure. A JADU is a junior ADU, and a junior ADU is actually constructed out of an existing, doesn't necessarily technically have to exist, but it's an existing single family home. So if you have a bedroom or your garage or something that's enclosed space in your home, then you can convert that and it's attached. So it's not a detached garage situation, it's an attached garage situation. So that can be converted.
Is there a minimum size that can be? Because obviously garages are probably, well, I don't know, is a garage 736 square feet? I'm just looking at this picture.
Some garages are larger, but it is, sorry, I'm trying to think, it's a maximum of 450, 500, somewhere around there.
So there's a maximum of 400, call it
500.
500.
So the maximum JADU is 500. Is there a minimum?
I just don't believe there is a minimum.
So it can be.
We specifically left that one open. Because a JADU could be a bedroom that opens up to a bathroom that is shared with the household.
Okay. And then my other question would be, where are our neighbors? And Del Mar, obviously, coastal community, Carlsbad. Clearly, I've been seeing articles in the newspaper on the city of San Diego and the variances there. Are there good examples that you guys have looked at to draw from? Is there a matrix of what other cities are doing similar to what you have on your earlier pages that can be put together so we can see how, I'm living in a kind of a bubble of our conversations here and not having the benefit of being in the industry and talking to your peer groups at other cities and bringing those conversations, to the table or to this conversation.
Yes, we started a matrix, and I'll provide that with the draft ordinance.
And which cities are you speaking with that?
Right now, it's Santa Barbara, San Diego, Del Mar, Solana Beach, Oceanside, Carlsbad, basically coastal communities, because we're a little different than the inner county.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Great. I mean, is there any other questions you'd like answered from us, Jennifer, or have we given you enough to chew on?
I think so. I think I'm good.
All right, you're gonna have a fun July. If that's the case, then Susan, I see your hands up again, please.
Well, I just had one other question, which is, are we going to allow, for example, prefabricated tiny homes as an ADU, that kind of thing? Or is there any city regulation or ordinance that would prohibit that?
Not aware of any prohibition of prefabricated homes. However, some situations of tiny homes is that they're not actually placed on an actual, sorry, my brain is not working on this one. Yeah, it's not actually placed. So you can't have them on wheels. We don't allow that. They have to actually be a permanent prefabricated home placed on that site, and it needs to be connected to utilities.
No, well, that's something I think we'll address in future meetings, probably not here, but I know that's, I've already had somebody, I've got a 1/4 acre lot behind me that's isolated from the road, has no road access, has water, but no electric. And I had somebody was begging me to let them come in with a crane and drop one of these totally self-enclosed ADU units. It had solar panels, it had chemical toilet. It really, all it needed was water connected to it. And honestly, the requirements to have it there were too steep. I mean, I would have had to connect to sewer. I would have had to run electric lines out there. I would have had to do a lot of things that weren't really required. So, I mean, a lot of our code is designed for things that didn't exist when they were designed. So I'm pretty sure, hopefully we'll have opportunities to discuss this. One of the items on our work plan is, it's not yet been heard by council, but we want to address the housing affordability crisis and look for creative ways that we can tweak our zoning to allow more of it. So that'll be one of the items up for discussion, but I don't think that's really an item for tonight. I think we've given you everything you need for tonight, Jennifer. It is 8:20 and I'm going to propose a small break just for stretch our legs. Tarquin, hi there. You popped up again. Would everyone be okay with, I don't know, it's 8:20, meet back here at 8:30. We'll finish off with the bylaws and we'll be done certainly long before 10.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Sounds good. I'm gonna call this meeting, what's the word, in recess for 10 minutes. We'll all be back at 8:30. recommending people periodically stay in the meeting, but turn their video off just because it's, too many. This isn't for us. We're here for a few hours, but I've friends who work basically all day long on Zoom, and it's sometimes you want to scratch your nose in a way that might look like something else, but you don't want people seeing.
I'm with you, my friend. I'm with you.
Whoop. That's 8:30. Back on silent here. All right. How are we doing on participants? Let's there's Chris. Susan's nearby. There she is. Yep. Well, those 10 minutes, sometimes you wish they were 12. I'm gonna call this meeting back to order at 8:30 p.m. and we'll jump right into the last item on our regular agenda. We have item 8C, our Planning Commission bylaws. And here we're going to review and consider amendments to the Planning Commission bylaws. We've continued this item a couple of times, trying to have all 5 commissioners here to discuss this. Today we are again short one, but it was Steve Dalton who's worked with me and Anna going over this in the first place. Now, 2 things here. I mean, one, Anna, we can jump right into this. Before we do, Tarquin, I'm glad you're here because there's the legal opinion on abstentions. And, I'm wondering if you can elaborate on this for us, please.
Thank you, Chair Doyle. I'd be happy to. So as set forth in the staff report, under this commission's bylaws, and I'll mention that different councils and different commissions have different rules regarding abstentions. Although one common rule that's under state law is that if abstention is for a legal reason, such as a conflict of interest, that cannot be counted as a vote one way or the other. But basically, to go into the rules governing the Planning Commission's recusals and bylaws. So if, as I said, if an abstention is based on a recusal because of a conflict of interest, that person, of course, has to leave the room, and that person's vote is not counted as for the purposes of a quorum, nor is it counted for purposes of vote for or against. It's just simply listed as absent or abstained with a legal reason. The other rules for abstentions, if a person wants to abstain, or if a commissioner wants to abstain, under the bylaws, they would state the reason for the abstention, and their non-vote would not be counted. Their non-vote would be counted as a 0, as a non-vote. So if you had a quorum present of 3, and you had 2 votes in favor and 1 abstention, the 1 abstention would still be counted for purposes of a quorum. So you'd have 2 votes in favor and no votes against with 1 abstention, but that abstention counts for a quorum. Similarly, if you had a quorum of 3, 3 commissioners present, and 1 voted yes, 1 voted no, and 1 abstained, you still have a quorum for purposes of voting, but the motion would fail because you only had 1 affirmative vote, not 2 affirmative votes. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm I'm a little concerned because we have a long-standing tradition here where to approve a project, we've needed 3 yes votes. Now I'm concerned. Seem to indicate we could have 3 commissioners present. One of them could say I'm abstaining and then walk out of the room, and then we would have 2 commissioners. I mean, a 2 to. You seem to be indicating that a 2-to-1 vote would approve. If 3.
Correct. Now I will qualify that. If there is currently a part of the bylaws that require a majority vote of the entire commission, that is 3 out of 5 to vote in favor, that's a different situation. If there is that rule, then the analysis in the staff report would be different. But absent such a rule, then the analysis in the staff report and what I just said would apply.
Now, if we as a commission wanted to codify, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word, because from my understanding, it's supposed to be more difficult for us to approve a project than to have it denied. And that's been part of the rationale for why we need 3 yes votes. And we're not just a normal commission. We're actually, we go back to our founding in 1986. We're a commissioner appointed from each of the 5 communities of Encinitas. And I would prefer to codify. How do you pronounce that word, Tarquin? You'd know.
Yeah, sure. The word is codify.
Codify.
And if I can explain a little further, when we say codify, it means to put it in municipal code that is adopted by an ordinance.
So I'm saying that incorrectly.
So if you want putting it in the bylaws is what I think you're referring to, because that's not codification. Those are just bylaws.
My apology.
No, that's fine.
But I would like my fellow commissioners to discuss this, because I would like it to require 3 absolute yes votes from 3 commissioners to approve a project. I feel if we get down to 3 people on a commission, it might be more convenient to get things done quicker to allow a 2-to-1 vote to prevail. But I remember when we had our new council chambers worked in, we sat for an hour tweaking it so that it would not take a 2-to-1 vote as an approval. It would take it as a denial, needing 3 positive yes votes. I personally, it's important to me, but I want to hear from the other commissioners here. It's like, what do you think?
So did Tarquin just say that we'd have to change the municipal code though in order to codify?
We don't need to codify. We just need to add something to our bylaws saying that to approve a quasi-judicial project requires the positive yes votes.
Do you want to do that for all projects, or you only have a certain?
I'm thinking not so important when it comes to ordinances, because we're not the judicial group here. We would be basically providing recommendations to council. And if we send recommendations with fewer commissioners than we usually have, that's so it goes. But when it comes to a quasi-judicial process where we're approving a project, possibly a big project, we don't want to find a situation, and I like to look ahead past us. We're all good, ethical people, but 20 years from now, somebody could make arrangements where 2 commissioners travel out of town, 2 commissioners are there, and we can end up with a contentious project approved by only 2 commissioners. And I find that unacceptable. I think it should be a minimum of 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me raise my hand.
No, that's okay. That's actually, if everyone could unmute and we could just talk, there's only a few of us here.
Chair, how do we define, and commissioners, how do we define in council what the dividing line is between what requires 3? Are there going to be a lengthy set of conditions? If A, then B, then C, then D, then that requires 3 people. Do you put qualifiers on size? Do you put a qualifier on whole dollars? Because it has an EIR. I don't know. I like the idea, but I'm concerned that we'd be creating a series of steps that have to be met. And then that step could be, then step number 2.4 could be challenged by the applicant. And then we're in this morass of not getting to our qualified vote. So good. Sorry,
that's okay. It's just, I know we've been in situations where we're down a commissioner, we only have 4, all of a sudden somebody's recused because they're the architect or something, and we have 3 commissioners sitting. And at that point, our understanding has always been is that we need a unanimous vote to approve that project. And we've offered applicants the chance of continuing it until we have more commissioners, so that they don't have to deal with this nuclear option of either 3 unanimous votes yes or a denial.
Mm-hmm.
So
right, and there is that issue, and Anna can explain it better than me, with something coming to us, can't come to us more than twice. Is it twice, Anna? And then if it's not a unanimous vote, so it would fail, it passes or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about, Anna?
Not that one specifically, no.
Something like that?
No, I'm not familiar with that, but I did want to say that it does say in the bylaws, a quorum of the commission shall consist of a majority of the 5 members. But as far as voting,
so because there's a limit to the number of times something can be continued.
There's a couple of meetings that are 5. I know a lot of the housing elements are limited to 5.
Right, that's the housing element. You can't have more than 5. But I'll look into the no more than 2, Commissioner Ryan, that you're referring to.
I thought there was an issue at one meeting. I think I was watching it, and there were 3 commissioners, and it was the last time it could be in front of the Planning Commission. And if I think if it wasn't a no vote, or if it was a 2-to-1, it would be considered a yes, and it was going to move forward. I don't remember the exact details, but I thought there was a situation like that where there had to be a unanimous vote of no.
I can look into that more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Ryan, if I can respond to your question on the number of hearings, different types of projects under different scenarios may place a limit on the number of hearings. It's not a universal rule, but it tends to be project and law specific, law is applicable to that particular type of application.
Okay.
Commissioner Sherrod.
Well, I really don't have a preference. I don't know. I think hopefully commissioners are somewhat judicious, and hopefully if it is a really big project and there are only 3 commissioners present, that there might be a commissioner that would vote, make a motion to continue. But I suppose it's possible they would not, in which case, you know, a 2-1 vote, you know, would mean it passed. I think what is it with city council, if they have that situation, does it have to pass with 3 or no?
Commissioner Sherrod, if I can respond to your question. So there's some types of actions under state law, such as ordinances and payment of money and certain related actions that require a majority vote of the majority vote of the entire membership of the city council, which would be 3 affirmative votes and the entire member of the council being 5, right? So you need a 3 out of 5 to adopt an ordinance and take certain other actions. But the general rule for city council is you need a majority of the quorum present. So the majority of the quorum would be 3. So if 3 council members are present, you would need 2 affirmative votes to approve an item.
Okay, well, in that case, in light of that, it seems like we should have a similar policy, no? For the Planning Commission.
If you don't mind, I'd like to interject very quickly. I did find it. I knew it was in here on the bylaws of page 6, the action of Planning Commission. The Planning Commission shall act by motion or may give direction to staff by consensus, minute order. Per Encinitas Municipal Code, 3 affirmative votes are required for any of the following motions to be approved. Approve with findings, if applicable, approve subject to conditions, deny with findings and continuances. So we do already have that in there.
Well, which section is that?
This is section, let's see, it would be Planning Commissioner Rules of Procedure. So it would be number 1, letter C.
Okay, I think mine's
section 6.
My pages are, I'm looking at the staff report and you're looking at
so yeah, I'm looking at the bylaws themselves that are numbered. So they should be separately numbered. However, let me see if I can find the exact.
Public hearings. This is great because this is what I was looking for, but
yeah, it's page 6C, and then you have so Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. 3 affirmative votes. Now, in this instance, though, 3 affirmative votes means 3 affirmative votes. Does that mean 2 plus a recuse, 2 plus an abstention?
So what that in effect means is you have to have a majority of the entire membership of the Planning Commission to approve those certain items.
Okay, so, but concerning abstentions now, let's say we have only 3 commissioners here. 2 of them vote yes, 1 of them abstains for, I forget which reason, automatically turns into a yes and which doesn't.
So under the bylaws, my understanding is failure to vote or failure to state an abstention would count with a majority vote.
Okay.
But under the bylaws, an abstention to abstain would still be accounted for the quorum, but wouldn't be counted as a vote. So it's still for those specific items that require a majority of the quorum. My interpretation is that an abstention would not count for those 3 votes.
But if I just didn't vote and the roll call comes around and they call my name and I don't say anything, you're saying that's basically an affirmative based on the.
That's correct. That's my understanding of the bylaws.
So it does say, though, that a commissioner abstaining shall state a short sentence explaining the reason for abstaining. So you couldn't have the situation where someone's just quiet about abstaining.
I shared the screen. Are you able to see the bylaws?
Yeah.
I just brought up the abstention votes section.
Right, I just read from G.
But I'm not abstaining, I'm just not voting under my example.
Yeah, under the text of G, silence or not voting electronically shall be recorded as voting with majority.
And that is the only situation where 2 affirmative votes plus somebody who just spaces out and doesn't say anything would count as 3 yes votes for approving with findings, for instance, or approve subject to conditions and findings. Those four options that were there. I'm looking back at number C, if you could just a page up. That one right there. So I'm just curious about the 3 affirmative votes. So one of those affirmative votes could be an abstention based on non-responsiveness. Is that a correct statement?
Well, no, an abstention has to state a reason. They have to state, I abstain. And then it's not counted with the majority. But just using the phrase abstention, I think can be used different ways. But I think the terminology under the bylaws was just a simple failure to vote without stating a reason for not voting. If you state a reason for not voting, that's considered abstention. So if a commissioner remains silent, inattentive, just doesn't vote, then that non-vote is counted with the majority.
So they could also just, I abstain, and then go like this and not say anything at all. In that case, that would come, we would probably share with them that would be, unless they state a valid reason, that's going to be counted as a yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Chair Doyle, because at that point, the abstaining commissioner would have failed to follow procedure. Therefore, that if you don't follow that procedure, it's not counted as an abstention.
Right.
No, it's not a proper abstention. I think that's the better view.
Okay. Well, thank you, Anna, for pulling up section C. I don't know how many times I've gone through these bylaws and missed that section, looking desperately for it. I was sure it was there. Because, and this is the kind of quasi-judicial processes I'm concerned about, approving projects, etc. Chris, I see you still have your hand up. Do you have more to say?
No, sorry.
Anna, Tarquin, thank you so much for being here on this. This was, I get all excited about these things. I don't know if that happens.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
I think we could probably look at the minor changes we're proposing for the bylaws now and actually move forward here.
Yes, that was going to be my recommendation, just going through the track changes that are shown based on the previous input that we received when we discussed this the last couple of times and with our subcommittee. So this one is in regards to the quasi judicial matters. There was a inquiry to just add and expand this part here. So let me know if you have any comments on this one. I can give you a minute to read it.
And I'll interject here for the record that let the record show that Commissioner Steve Dalton is here for this item. And thank you very much, Steve. We were concerned about not having all 5 for the bylaws, but
thank you. Sorry for being late. I have been watching online, so I've heard some of the discussion already about the stuff you've already covered. But
great. We're all in good shape. Anna, if you want to move forward again, I just thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt like that.
No, not a problem. I was just leaving the first track changes up here. There was just a request to add something regarding quasi judicial matters. And so this is the language that was added, and I wanted to see if you had any questions or changes.
I have none. I've been happy with the work we've done on this.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up.
No.
Time to think about it or move to the next one?
All right, we could move to the next one.
Move on.
I have no comment.
Okay, great. This was the secretary shall provide to each member all supporting information and minutes of the previous meeting, not less than 7 calendar days prior to the date of the meeting. This was changed from 6 to 7. This was more consistent with city council procedures. Process for developing agendas. The sentence that was added, it was the secretary may coordinate the agenda with the chair when feasible and necessary. Let's see. I didn't find anything regarding the why this was highlighted for continuances, but if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. But we did add this one statement here: remote meetings shall follow Government Code Section 54953 protocol. This was discussed with legal counsel, and it's best to reference the Government Code section rather than be specific because of the ever-changing environment. And so it refers to state law.
For the record, I have the continuances section highlighted in yellow on my copy too, and I have no idea why.
Yeah. See, can read it. The commission may continue an item for any reason, provided the commission states the reasoning for the continuance, which must include an explanation for why the continuance would potentially enable the commission to obtain the additional information or project revisions they may need to reach a decision at the subsequent continued hearing date. Examples include, but are not limited to, a lack of remaining meeting time, request for more information, and request for an applicant to make revisions to the project resulting from the public hearing. It is the chair's discretion whether to ask the applicant for a voluntary continuance. The chair will consult with the secretary about whether to continue to a date certain or uncertain. So straightforward. I see Susan's, Commissioner Sherrod's hand up.
I see Susan has her hand up as well.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that on page 9 about electronic devices that we had proposed that some change for that. I know that, for example, I often use my phone because of my, it allows accessibility features. And so I think that it's very useful. I use an iPhone with a fairly large screen. It's a plus size, and it allows me to hear via Bluetooth to earbuds or to a hearing aid. So this one, item E on page 9 under rules of procedure. It seems like we should modify that a little bit, that it could be allowed for accessibility.
Let's see here. I thought I remembered thinking that it was covered in the language that was already here, but I'm open to.
I thought we talked about this as well, and it's outlining that's for if you were emailing or texting or messaging, communicating outside the meeting. But I think that second line, if in the opinion of the chair, the commissioner's use of the electronic device. Anyway, I feel like there was adequate flexibility to allow it for a hearing aid.
And there was also this phrase where it's after it says where it'll be prohibited, use of electronic devices for communication shall be prohibited. And they talk about these things, but it also has the caveat for emailing or text messaging, etc. And I think that is the line that actually is pinning down what is prohibited. What's prohibited is sitting up there and texting people and emailing, and then, we've had issues in the past with, not in our group, but I've seen this in council where we've had certain commissioners who seem to be texting each other, and it was like, well, don't do that. So that's what that point is about. So maybe that could be made more clear, but it seems clear to me. And I think
Chair Doyle, if I could be heard for a moment,
please.
I concur. I don't read this as prohibiting.
Okay, as long as
I don't prohibit this as limiting
as long as
the use of a electronic device for accessing the meeting or for reliance on the electronic device as a way of reasonable accommodation. If someone has a need to interpret the meeting through an electronic device, I don't read it that way. I think your interpretation is also correct.
Yeah, I think since it's prohibited for communication, but not for accessibility use, it's okay. Okay.
I mean, you could add to third parties, but that's probably overkill.
We could move on, I think.
Okay. No comments on the continuances?
No.
No remote meetings?
Glad to see it.
Okay. I think I just had to
Wait, that was one. 10 minutes. Sorry. Wait. There's something about 10 on letter H, 10 minutes.
Yes, applicant presentations may be a maximum of 10 minutes. The chair may allow additional time for complex projects.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that came up during the Maria presentation where Larry was able to, per the chair, provide a little extra time. I think that's
and he asked for the time, and we had a few people there, so it made sense.
Oh, yeah.
I also see here, if offered at the discretion of the chair, closing statements may be a maximum of 3 minutes, which I've missed that line up until this moment. I think I've given 5 in the past, but we have these bylaws are guidelines. They're not laws that we follow them, but we also have discretion, and it's usually called out this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one allows you to do the 5 minutes. It says unless the chair grants additional time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay to move on?
Please.
Okay. Planning Commission action against staff recommendation must require modifications to the resolution and return to Planning Commission unless directed by Planning Commission to authorize staff to prepare and finalize. This one came from, there's situations where when staff comes forward with a recommendation to approve a project and the Planning Commission determines to deny the project, there is no resolution for the denial. So the Planning Commission would then, the staff would have to return to the Planning Commission with a resolution for denial. And there are cases in which the Planning Commission may decide that they would give us the findings for the denial and simply direct staff to go forward with those statements of denial. And it does not have to come return back to the Planning Commission because there's a clear understanding of what the findings of the denial are. And then the decision will be final at that moment. Alternatively, the commission can also say, we want to see you come back to the Planning Commission at the next meeting with that resolution of denial. In cases where you may want to see it more so is when staff recommends denial and you recommend approval. A denial does not have any conditions of approval placed on a project. So then we would have to return with findings made, with conditions of approval and things like that.
And the default would be that it would come back to the Planning Commission unless we directed otherwise.
Yes.
I think we discussed this one at length in previous meetings, and I think this captures our consensus.
Okay. I don't see any other questions from the group. All right, looks like we are at the end.
Well, we took a light touch on this one, which is good. I mean, you should never get heavy-handed on your bylaws because it can have unforeseen consequences. So I think we did good work on this. Thank you, Steve, for working with me on this subcommittee, and thank you everyone for getting involved in this. I think when we get a nice clean copy of this thing again, I think this should be part of the package that is delivered to new commissioners. So first thing you should know is like read your bylaws, and if you actually do read it, you'll discover that it's going to recommend that you read a bunch of other things. But you know, it's all here. It's just it looks like boilerplate, but it's not really. It's critically important to the work we do. But if no one else wants to jump in, I'm going to make a motion that we accept these modifications to our bylaws.
Second.
I got 3 seconds at the exact same second. Bob, you were slow.
No, I didn't say anyone. Pick
I know.
one. Oh, all right. So I'm the default second. Yes, I'd like to second that motion.
No. I don't know who wants the second on this one. Steve was was on our subcommittee.
I heard Susan first myself.
I heard Susan. It is. Thank you, Susan.
So that is to be specific, you're accepting the modifications, and so it's to direct staff to return with a resolution reflecting these amendments to the bylaws that are approved by the Planning Commission. So on August 4th, we'll return with the resolution approving these modifications.
And I would imagine, assuming it looks exactly like this, that'll be on our consent calendar, correct?
Correct.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Dina, can you call the question, please?
I would love to. Chair Doyle?
Aye.
Vice Chair Dalton?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherrod?
Aye.
Commissioner Ryan? Yeah. I didn't hear. Okay. And Commissioner
Aye.
All right. Looks like it's a unanimous vote.
All right. Well, that's another item put to bed. We're going to move on in our agenda. Do we have any future agenda items that would like to be added by the planning commissioners? I'm not seeing a lot of nodding heads. Do we have any planning commission reports? Susan, I know last time at the ECR, the next ECR workshop is coming up again, or is that, I've lost track.
Yeah, I only gave a really brief update last time, but basically they do have another meeting coming up, and I think, I'm not sure what date it is, I'm sorry, but
we're all
but it is on the website, and it is the workshop, the second workshop I attended, and Bob Tendergast also attended, and it was interesting, and it was very different than the first workshop. The format allowed us to look at some chipboard models they had in 3D, and they did a presentation initially, and then we broke out into groups working on showing how we would configure any changes that we would do. But all of the things that we worked on basically would require zoning changes in a Proposition 8 vote. And then they had a separate area on the opposite side of the room with charts where you could add dots for different scenarios of what was desirable, what was not desirable. They kind of rated it from, strongly to least liked solutions in terms of aesthetics and in terms of massing and so on. And then they had a third area where there were 2D large scale printouts of the layout of the corridor, and people were using Post-its to indicate what they wanted. I noticed that again, it's very divided. Some people really want to see that area with housing, and some people want no housing. So it was very similar to workshop 1 in terms of the results. You'll be able to see them on the city website. I'm sure staff will summarize that for us.
I followed through on the survey that was sent to us, and worked with the online tool, placing where I thought little houses should go on the map. And I remember looking at it and thinking they should, just where we have little blocks that say housing would be good here, we should have another one with little house with a red X on it. So I think because right now all you can do is give thumbs up to different locations. You can't thumbs down anything. But it's interesting. I hope we get a lot of feedback on that. I'm very excited about that corridor, and I'm going to be following this very closely. So keep us informed, and we'll be there. I'll be at the next one. I've missed 2 in a row now, and I feel awful, but I only have so many hours in the day. But
you did the online survey, so that's great.
Yeah,
you did participate. That's the great thing about the digital solutions, that everyone in town has the option to participate if they want to.
I think more and more of our meetings will be going hybrid. I think that's the way, just like Planning Commission is hybrid now, because we need Zoom for accessibility uses. It also opens it up to different people who can't leave or don't want to leave their homes. Chris, I see your hand up. Do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I do. So on June 17th, I did attend the Institute for Local Government training, Planning Commissioner training down at the library by the IKEA in Mission Valley. It was a day-long program, so it was very interesting. I got to meet other planning commissioners from around the county. So that was actually, I thought, was very good, including several from Carlsbad. They had quite a few from Carlsbad there. So just want to report that I did attend that training. I thought it was good. I thought I was a little disappointed in the new laws section. I was hoping it'd be a little bit beefier there, and it was a little bit more of like why we need affordable housing versus the new housing laws, affordable housing laws. But a big section on CEQA, which I thought was really good. So I would definitely say it was worth attending if they offer another one in the future, if anybody wants to attend. And there was a wide range of level of experience in the room, including one guy who'd been a planning commissioner off and on. He's actually a county planning commissioner now, with a lot of years of experience. And he acted almost like another trainer a lot during the meeting, which I thought was interesting and very insightful. So if you ever have a chance to attend one of those, I thought it was well done. And it's a group from out of Sacramento.
Thanks for going to that, Chris.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. I remember the first 2 trainings I went through. I learned, some of the presentations were a little dorky, but what was really so good was being able to talk to the other planners there.
Mhm.
There's other people who had less experience. Well, hardly anyone had less experience than me at the time, but there's people, as you say, who had just a wealth of experience and planning commissioners. I mean, there's a long history of people mentoring up the next generation, because we term out for good reason, but it's, by the time, we term out, there's already, everyone else is trained up.
Yeah.
And at least that's the theory. But great. If it does come up again, I looked at it, it was too much of a time burden for me at the
It was
time.
on a Friday, so Kevin didn't want to go.
Yeah, it's my long weekend.
I'm joking.
All right. Anyone else, planning commissioners? Nay? I'll ask Anna Kalamusi to give a secretary report if you could.
Yes, of course. The first item is that I did want to let you know is the online activities for the El Camino Real specific plan are still online, and they're there until July 13th. So the link is still up on the city's website, and people can still participate in that. The staff will be at the farmers market for the El Camino Real specific plan on July 10th. And then we have on July 21st is the next mobility workshop. So a lot happening in July. And then the last item I did want to state was the Maria Village Housing Element Site project was appealed. And so it will be heard by City Council in August. And that's all I have.
Wait, question. I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you, I did not follow that at the City Council. Can you tell us who appealed? Or do I need to go to the City Council minutes and look at that?
It's public record.
Okay.
So, yep, happy to share that. And so it was appealed, and then it needs to go on the first agenda in council, which I believe is August 10th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you could, Anna, could you share a link for that? So where I could find that?
Yes, I can. I'll share it with all of the planning
Share it
commission.
with the commissioners.
And are you asking just the link in general, or when the staff?
I'm curious about the appeal myself. So I want
I see, to the appeal.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I can share
I've
that.
got plenty of information about the project itself.
Yes, I will share the appeal with all the planning commissioners.
It's good for us to watch these things through, soup to nuts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, do we have anything more, Anna?
I do not.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It is, I'm going to adjourn this meeting to the next regular Planning Commission meeting of August 4th, 2022. And I hope you all have a wonderful July. I'll be seeing you around. I'll be at the farmer's market when the ECR is there. And it is 9:13 and I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.